After creating the video about Lucy Pevensie and receiving such a warm response, we knew we had to continue exploring the world of Narnia. That's why this time, we're diving into the story of one of the saga's most beloved siblings, Edmund Pevensie, also known as Edmund the Just, King of Narnia. Without further ado, let's begin. Edmund, the third child in the Pevensie family, was born in 1930. His younger sister, Lucy, arrived in 1932, while his other two siblings, Peter and Susan, were older than him. Edmund was a tender and kind child until at the age of 9 in 1939, he was sent to boarding school with his brother Peter, an experience that had a negative impact on him. The Pevensie family led a quiet and harmonious life in England until the outbreak of World War II, when their father was enlisted in the army to fight for his country. Later, in September 1940, due to the bombings over London, Edmund and his siblings were evacuated to the countryside, where they stayed at the house of an elderly professor. Shortly after arriving, Edmund began to mock Lucy, who claimed to have found a magical world and met a being named Tumnus in a mysterious wardrobe in the house. Initially skeptical, Edmund decided to follow his sister Lucy through the wardrobe, which led to a snow-covered world. There, he met a woman who called herself the Queen. She offered him food, drink, and the chance to become a prince if he brought his siblings to her. Unknowingly, Edmund revealed valuable information about his family and Lucy's previous visit to Narnia. When they returned, Lucy warned Edmund that the woman was actually an evil witch. Edmund, however, dismissed her warning and kept his experience a secret from the others. Days later, the four siblings hid in the wardrobe and once again found themselves in Narnia. At that moment, Edmund had to admit he had lied, which angered Peter. The siblings decided to visit the faun Tumnus, but when they arrived, they found an arrest warrant on his door. A beaver took them to his home and explained that Narnia was under the control of a witch and that the true king, Aslan, had returned to reclaim the throne. He also told them that, according to a prophecy, they were destined to defeat the witch and assume the throne. Still thinking about his encounter with the witch, Edmund escaped to meet her at her castle. Although he explained that he had brought his siblings closer, the witch locked him in a dungeon. Later, she took him on her sled to track the others, and along the way, she used her magic to turn some animals celebrating Aslan's return to stone. This act made Edmund begin to understand the witch's true nature and regret his betrayal. Eventually, the snow began to melt, signaling the weakening of the witch's power. Unable to catch up with his siblings, she decided to kill Edmund to prevent the prophecy from being fulfilled. However, a group sent by Aslan rescued him. After a private conversation with Aslan and apologizing to his siblings, Edmund was forgiven. The witch later tried to claim Edmund at Aslan's camp, but Aslan convinced her to relinquish her claim. In the final battle, Edmund destroyed the witch's wand, an act of bravery that resulted in him being injured. Aslan's intervention and reinforcements secured victory. Edmund was healed by Lucy and knighted by Aslan before the four siblings were crowned as the new sovereigns of Narnia. The Pevensie siblings ruled Narnia for 15 years, from 1000 to 1015 NT, a period remembered as the Golden Age. During this time, Edmund earned the title Edmund the Just for his wisdom and skills as both a diplomat and a warrior. 14 years after being crowned, Edmund and his sister Susan traveled to Tashbaan to sign a treaty. There, Prince Rabadash of Calormen expressed interest in Susan. When she rejected him, he attempted to hold them prisoner. However, they managed to escape aboard their ship, the Splendor Hyaline, and returned to Cair Paravel, only to discover that Rabadash was advancing with an army toward Archenland, an ally of Narnia. Edmund organized a Narnian army, and along with Lucy, marched south to help. In the battle, Rabadash challenged Edmund to a duel, but King Lune prevented it, deeming Rabadash unworthy of such an honor. A year later, the Pevensies received news of the White Stag's return to Narnia and decided to hunt it. During the search, they arrived at a mysterious clearing that awakened vague memories. As they ventured into the forest, they suddenly returned to England. Thanks to Narnia's magic, the years they had spent ruling the land had not passed on Earth, and they had not aged. Edmund, once again a child, returned to boarding school with Peter, but with newfound maturity. The following year, the four siblings set off once again for their schools. Peter and Edmund went to Hendon House, while Susan and Lucy attended St. Finbarr's. During their journey, they felt a strange pull, which they recognized as the call of magic. In an instant, they were transported back to a mysterious forest, this time to join the Liberation War in Narnia. The Pevensie siblings arrived on a deserted island covered in dense forest, where they discovered the ruins of a castle Peter recognized as the ancient Cair Paravel. Edmund doubted that the castle could have deteriorated so much in just 1 year, but his skepticism faded when they found the old treasury. The next day, they learned that time runs differently in Narnia. As they continued exploring, they encountered 2 Telmarine soldiers attempting to drown a dwarf. Peter and Susan rescued the dwarf, and Edmund freed him from his bonds. The dwarf, named Trumpkin, explained that the Telmarines had invaded Narnia, forcing its inhabitants to hide. He also mentioned that Prince Caspian had called the ancient kings and queens to help him reclaim his throne. Edmund challenged Trumpkin to a duel to prove his skills, and after defeating him, Trumpkin agreed to guide them to Caspian. They traveled by boat and then on foot to a gorge. Upon spotting the Rush River, Lucy insisted she had seen Aslan, who indicated they should go up. However, the group decided to go down and ended up near a Telmarine post, where they were attacked but managed to escape. That night, Lucy woke Edmund to tell him that Aslan had once again shown her the way. Although initially reluctant, Edmund followed her and finally saw Aslan himself. Thanks to this, the group managed to reach Caspian's camp, where Aslan greeted Edmund with a "well done." Peter, Edmund, and Trumpkin formally met with Caspian, while the queens departed with Aslan. They arrived just in time to defend Caspian from an attack by a witch, a wolf, and a dark dwarf. After defeating them, Peter challenged Miraz, the leader of the Telmarines, to a duel. Edmund was the one who delivered the challenge to the king, observing alongside Caspian as Peter fought. After the duel, the Telmarines broke the agreement and initiated an open battle. Edmund was the first to assist Peter, pursuing the Telmarines to the fords of Baruna, where Aslan, the queens, and the Narnian reinforcements blocked their retreat, forcing their surrender. After the victory, Caspian was knighted. The Pevensie siblings spent a few days with him as he organized his reign, and then they departed through a magical door, returning to their lives in 1941. The Pevensies once again found themselves on their way to school, just as they had been before their adventure. As planned, Edmund and Peter returned to their boarding school. The following year, their parents and Susan traveled to America, while Edmund and Lucy were sent to live with their Aunt Alberta and Uncle Harold. During their stay, Edmund had to share a room with his younger cousin, Eustace Scrubb, with whom he did not get along. During those days, Edmund often visited Lucy's room, where they would talk about Narnia and look at a painting on the wall that both thought resembled a ship from that world. One day, Eustace caught them talking about Narnia and entered with the intention of mocking them. However, as he stepped into the room, the painting began to come to life, enveloping them and transporting Edmund, Lucy, and their cousin Eustace to Narnia. Edmund, Lucy, and Eustace appeared in the seas of Narnia, where they were rescued by the ship Dawn Treader, led by King Caspian. Caspian explained that their mission was to find 7 lost lords of Narnia and explore the farthest reaches of the world in search of Aslan. Soon after, Edmund and the group were captured by slave traders on the island of Felamath, where they were separated from Caspian. The next day, Caspian and his crew stopped the auction and abolished the slave trade, freeing their friends. After spending a few days in the Lone Islands, they continued their journey, enduring a hurricane before stopping at an uninhabited island for repairs. During their stay, Eustace disappeared, and the next day the group encountered a dragon, which turned out to be Eustace under a spell. After several weeks stranded, Eustace regained his human form and showed genuine remorse, accepting Edmund's guidance and beginning to change his attitude. Back at sea, the ship was attacked by a sea serpent and later arrived at an island with a pond that turned anything it touched into gold. Edmund briefly fell under the spell of greed until Aslan helped him see reason. The next stop was an island with cultivated land and an abandoned property inhabited by invisible people who demanded the Narnians fulfill their requests. The Narnians agreed, and Lucy performed a spell to make the island's inhabitants visible, despite Edmund's initial doubts. Afterward, they left the island on good terms. Upon reaching the Silver Sea, they took a rowboat to the edge of the world, where Reepicheep ventured onward into Aslan's realm. The remaining three were greeted by Aslan, who told them that Edmund and Lucy would never return to Narnia. With that, he opened a portal and sent them back to England. In 1949, Edmund and the other 7 friends of Narnia gathered at Polly's house to reminisce about their incredible adventures in that magical world. During their meeting, they had a vision of Tirian, the last king of Narnia, desperately facing a great threat. Determined to help, they decided to send Eustace and Jill back to Narnia, using the magic rings that had once transported Diggory and Polly to the realm during its creation. Edmund and Peter, in disguise, retrieved the rings from the garden of Diggory's old house and then headed to the train station to meet the rest of their friends. However, tragedy struck when a train accident claimed the lives of Edmund, nearly the entire Pevensie family, except Susan, Professor Kirk, and Polly Plummer. After their passing, Edmund and the other friends found themselves in Aslan's realm, where they were joyfully reunited with their loved ones. Together, they witnessed the end of Narnia and celebrated eternity in the presence of Aslan, alongside all the inhabitants who had ever lived in Narnia and their own world. Let me know in the comments what other topics you'd like to see covered on the channel, and remember, if you enjoy this type of video, the best way to support me is by leaving a like, subscribing, and turning on the notification bell. See you in the next video.